We know that climate change is a global threat. We also know that human activity is the primary driver of climate change. So, as we gobble up limited natural resources and harm the planet in the process, consumers are asking retailers to care about the planet as much as they do. So, what should retailers be doing in response? Today, we're going to talk about retailer sustainability initiatives right now on everything we know about retail. Hello, my name is James Cook. I'm coming to you from Indiana. Ebere Anokute is in New York.
Hi there.
And Taylor Coyne is in Los Angeles.
Hello.
And this is Everything We Know About Retail, where we tell all of you everything we know about retail, 3 things at a time. Eberry's like giving me the cue.
Dynamic, trying to be dynamic,
I love it. Taylor, what do you know about retail?
Yeah, I am so glad you asked. This is the first thing that we know about retail, and it's the future is electric. Sounds
Woogie.
exciting. So we know the demand for electric vehicles is growing, especially as, I don't know, it's been a topic of conversation, I know, in our household as gas prices are soaring.
Oh, yeah.
Taylor.
I think everyone has realized, maybe electric is the way to go. So retailers are looking to capitalize on this. Don't know if you all saw last week, Starbucks announced that it is partnering with Volvo and ChargePoint to install EV charging stations in parking lots across a specific route. In this particular pilot project is from Seattle to Denver. I don't know how many Starbucks that means on that route, but there's quite a lot.
It's probably 100,000, I would say, in those coffee concentrated cities.
Yeah, well, so I also, we'll get there, but it's really interesting. So good on Starbucks, right? I mean, let's be honest, Starbucks isn't doing this out of the goodness of their hearts necessarily, but it is an awesome way to capitalize on this growing need for electric vehicles. And I think a lot of people are hesitant to take that plunge to buy an electric vehicle if they cannot, say, find a charging location on their route from Seattle to Denver. So, Starbucks is saying, great, this is how we can help the environment, but also this allows you to stop at our Starbucks for a solid 40, 45 minutes, depending on what kind of vehicle you have and what kind of chargers they're putting in. I think they say that you can plug in for 40 minutes and you can get to 80%. I think that that's what the kind of tagline is. But with 15,000 locations across the country, Starbucks is, if this goes well, look at how powerful Starbucks is going to be with all of their charging stations across the country of just showing up on your phone. Oh, well, don't worry. There's a Starbucks here. We can get coffee on our road trip and we can charge our car. It is so smart, I think. But again, this is a pilot project because, James, as you said, a lot of these locations are kind of in the middle of nowhere. So Starbucks is going to test the usage rates and decide whether it wants to expand nationally as part of its larger sustainability plan, which is apparently for them to make the company resource positive. So with a goal to capture more carbon than it emits, which is great. So we'll see. I think that that's great. And they're going to be really relying on Volvo and ChargePoint to do a lot of that. Apologies for my terminology, but the electric work that is required to get those charging stations in, a rural part of Idaho that's, on that route. But again, I think that this is capitalizing on a trend that we're starting to see. So according to Deloitte, EV sales are expected to reach 31.1 million by 2030 globally. So that's up from 2.5 million in 2020. So that's significant. And Statista predicts electric vehicles will account for 45% of the market in 2035. So again, we are not there yet, but we're clearly seeing more interest, more demand. So I think Starbucks is getting ahead of them, getting ahead of this curve, which I'll be curious to see. I can imagine their usage rates are going to be pretty low for that route, but I hope that it's not abandoned because it is low.
I don't think it'll be that low at all. 'Cause I think part of the the electric car issue is they're great for driving around town, but it's like when you want to go on a road trip, that's when it gets complicated. Like, I remember, we rented a Tesla and we're driving around Denver, and I was like, shoot, we got to go find we got to go find a town that has a charger or we're going to run out,
Yeah.
and that's what the purpose of like putting these in these small towns on these major routes.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah. So super exciting. Lots of interesting things. We've been seeing in malls, Simon has a whole EV page on where you can go and charge your vehicle, but this is a different class of where you're going to go charge. Simon malls aren't in the middle of Idaho. So exciting stuff.
Yeah,
Definitely
very cool.
exciting. And I know anecdotally, I've seen so many more electric vehicles on the road in the past, I don't know what you said, since 2020, at least in the past 3 years or so, I've seen so many more Teslas than I ever thought. But Taylor, do you think that this means we're going to see even more Tesla showrooms popping up on our high streets?
No, but you might be seeing Rivian showrooms,
Oh.
which I don't know if you all are familiar, which, it's a newer brand. So this is Rivian's electric products. There are only two. One is obviously big truck and, big SUV, lots of kind of with a real outdoorsy focus, right? Like the average person doesn't necessarily go need a pickup truck. So it's really trying to go into kind of a new market. This is obviously very different from a Tesla, but still kind of on that luxury side. So they're, it's a really niche market. I think, the truck on the left starts at $67,000. So, by no means is this an affordable vehicle for a lot of people.
Well, come out to Taylor, come out to Indiana, where literally, I'm going to say 80% of the vehicles that go down past my house are pickup trucks.
Which again, I think it's really interesting. And I remember I was reading, I forget, it was some podcast, and they were interviewing, I want to say he wasn't a farmer, but farming adjacent, and where he's always had trucks and has kind of been anti-electric. But recently, one of these, I don't think it was Rivian, but it was, one of those. And it was like, oh no, there was a truck and the mileage is amazing that I can do, X amount of my days without having to go and plug in. He's like, that's kind of a no-brainer. So you're really building, we've come a long way from the Prius, right? Of which I feel like gives a lot of people a specific thought of when you think kind of environmentally friendly vehicles. But anyway, so back to your question, Ebere. So Rivian, while not as, abundant as Tesla, they opened their first flagship in Venice last year. And they are called hubs. So they
Venice, California.
Yes, Venice, California. Sorry. Yes, not Venice, Italy. So the hub is a brick and mortar location in a populated area where consumers can visit to learn more about the automaker and its EV offerings. And I'm just going to show you what the Venice hub looks like right now. Talk about a delightful shopping experience that you might wonder if it is even a car showroom.
I'm waiting for something car related. There it is. Wait, it went away.
No, you're not. Like you can explore the hub. Like, look, okay, there's the truck. You can see that they have advertised to this outdoorsy consumer. You can see the tent on top of the car. So again, and Venice is a huge surfing community with people liking that outdoorsy activity. So I think that that's really, and also people, high earners in Venice as well. So I think it was a smart location, but they're all about, community and getting to know one another, giving back to the earth, environment, all of those things. Because obviously, as an electric vehicle maker, sustainability is top of mind. And interestingly, they are going to have more types of places. So, right, this is the hub. They have identified a few different locations. Another one is season spaces. Those are temporary spaces, activations. Another one of their real estate plans are called outposts. Those are located near adventure destinations, per their website, with gear and vehicle rentals, which I think is really interesting and speaks to that car with the camper on top, the tent. And then the last one is preserves. Located further in nature, they are large tracts of protected land.
But
Well-
wait, they're gonna have a showroom there?
Hard to say. I think it's less showroom as a place that whether they own the protected land, maybe they have bought it as some kind of conservation effort, and you can go and maybe rent the vehicle and go camping on a river. I'm not sure. They do not really explain it all that much, but they are clearly have a kind of a, I don't want to call this a real estate plan, considering it's clearly a rural environmental push.
Well, it's like the Prada in Marfa, Texas.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see. But clearly, their whole thing is yes, we want to sell you an expensive car, but we also want you to understand why you're buying this expensive car that, doesn't pollute the earth. And we care. And it's all about the sustainability, this larger sustainability plan. And we'll help you connect to nature that maybe you have forgotten how to do. So I think it's really interesting. And so apparently they had a second store planned, a second hub, in Fulton Market in Chicago. That apparently has not, come to fruition, probably pandemic things. But it sounds like they're still in the works to come up with a neighborhood close to Fulton Market. So I think we can expect to see more. Will we see as many as Tesla? Maybe not. But I think it's a kind of an interesting new chapter in this EV world of these kind of new brands popping up. 10 years ago, Tesla, 10 years from now, how many more Rivian and Teslas are we going to see? So an interesting new chapter in the EV sustainability world, I think.
Yeah.
May I add?
Go
Go ahead. No, I was going to say they announced, I remember seeing the comp last year that they were planning to come to New York, and they've announced that they were going to open I don't know if it's a hub or an outpost or a preserve or exactly what the plan is, but apparently they signed a 12,000 square foot lease in Williamsburg on Wythe Avenue. So haven't heard about it being opened yet, but I remember seeing the comp recently. So as you were talking, I looked it up and confirmed, yeah, they're coming to Williamsburg at some point. So
see, there you go. Which again, totally tracks with what I've kind of, gotten from their website. So I imagine you're going to see them in markets like that. And we'll see this. I mean, the space looks amazing. Next time I'm on the West Side, I'll try to go and check out this Venice location. It looks delightful.
I was just going to say that there's these niche automakers like a Tesla, even though the market cap on Tesla is insane, and Rivian. But it's like most cars come from these major automakers. A lot of them are like American or Asian, and all of these major automakers are announcing they're going electric or hybrid. I think that's where the real change is going to come from. I think it's like Rivian and Tesla make it cool, but then when most families actually buy their first electric car, it's going to be from like General Motors or something like that.
100%. You do question like this kind of niche, like how do I know this is a reliable car versus sometimes, if you think about Ford and them coming out with, a lot of those electric trucks, you're kind of like, oh, well, Ford's been around for a long time. Ford knows how to make cars. So, I think that ultimately though, it's probably options. All options are, good for the consumer generally. So yeah. I'm pro. And James, Tell us what you know about sustainability in retail this week.
Well, here's the second thing we know about retail. So when we say, like in that intro, I use the term sustainable, and a lot of us think that that's really just about the environment, but actually sustainability has three pillars. It's a three-legged stool, as they say. And retailers and brands these days are focusing on all three. So you've got the environment where you're caring about the earth, which is what we've been talking about. But then there's also economic sustainability, which is a real interesting trick because it's about economic growth. So people's economic lives getting better, but also economic growth that doesn't hurt the planet in the process. And then there's social sustainability, which is about equality and about just general human progress and general well-being. And brands are like taking a look at all of these now as a part of their sustainability initiatives.
How well-rounded of them. Can you give us an example of at least one retailer that is focusing on all of these three pillars?
Yeah, the most recent kind of announcement came from Macy's. They said they're going to be investing $5 billion by 2025 in creating a more equitable and sustainable future. It's got a name, like everything's got to have a tagline. It's called Mission. Yeah, Mission Everyone. So, like thinking about those pillars that I talked about: environment, economic, and social. Environmental stuff they're doing, they're going to be looking at using sustainable materials in their private brands. They're going to be investing and eliminating waste. From the economic standpoint, they're going to be looking at giving more educational benefits to their employees. They're also about to raise their minimum wage to $15 an hour starting in May. And as far as social is concerned, they've got the metric of they're going to be 30% of their employees who are director or above will be ethnically diverse by 2025. So they only got like 3 years to really start hiring. And they're also going to put $2 million into scholarships for underrepresented youth in fashion and design. So a lot of stuff, and that's only part of it. Another one is they're going to be doing audits of their suppliers for their private brands. I mean, that's a big part of this stuff is as a retailer with the way the global supply chain works, you don't typically own them where they're manufactured. It's all third party. And so a lot of times you don't have the visibility into how, like, what are the inputs? Are they sustainable? How are the workers being treated? And I do think that it's up to retailers and brands to start auditing all of their suppliers, which is an insane task because it's like so many different suppliers from all over the world. But anyway, like I said, Macy's is one of just many retailers that is doing this type of holistic initiative. It's kind of now the norm, which is a good sign. That means public expectations are high. People expect more from retail. So
yeah,
it's good stuff.
All of this, and I feel like, again, we've been reading a lot more of this, with the Starbucks news, this Macy's announcement, Target and their solar panels. And, some of those are very clearly actionable, but I do hope that some of these brands stay accountable to all of these things. There's always that, what is it, greenwashing, right?
Yeah.
This Macy's example seems a little different, but, you do always wonder, you can say all of this stuff and say that you mean it. It's kind of like tweeting something just because, you've said it in the Twitterverse doesn't actually make it real. And does you actually stack up to whatever you're kind of saying? So we'll see. I think the next few years, a lot of these goals have been set to 2025. I'll be curious to see how people have met them in a couple of years.
Taylor, I mean, how do you think we can hold these brands accountable? Is it just that we stop buying those products if they don't sort of meet their stated sustainability objectives? Or is there, obviously there's no governing body of retail, or is there, who can, impose sanctions if they don't, act on their stated sustainability goals? How do you think we can hold them accountable?
No, I think that's a really good question, right? Because people will say, boycott this.
Right.
And other people will be mad about the boycott. And then you go. And it's ultimately, yeah, your money does speak, right? Your money holds power to a lot of these brands, but it does seem to have to be a gigantic movement. No, I think it has to come from your board. I think you have to have activist board members. And activists might seem a little extreme, but that's ultimately how you get change, right? So ultimately, I think hiring a diverse board or, having a diverse group of people on your board or your investors is important because ultimately, I think the more diversity you have of people in charge, the more likely that someone's going to be like, yeah, no, this is not okay. We have to actually do these things. We're listening to our consumers. So I think ultimately it has to come from the top. Consumers, we have power, but unless every single person is, deciding not to shop at X, Y, and Z anymore.
And it's so much work to make a conscious decision about every purchase that you make. If you're going to the grocery store and buying all this stuff, your brain cannot handle making a decision about okay, I'm not just choosing coffee. I have to think about which one of these is lived up to their sustainability metrics and stuff.
It's exhausting. So yeah, I know. Ebere, I don't have an answer, but it's a great question.
I like your answer. No, your answer made a lot of sense to me. So please.
Quick tangent. You were talking about greenwashing, and it made me think about marketing as I was taking a sip of this mug. I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is a Tom's mug where they kind of came about doing the 1-for-1. model where you bought a pair of shoes and they would go, they'd send a pair of shoes. Didn't realize this. They don't do that anymore. Did you guys know
No,
that?
I
Yeah.
did.
Have we talked about that on this show? I don't think we.
I don't know
No.
about on the show, but you mentioned it. I've heard you mention it before. And
Yeah, they were like, it's just not working. Like a lot of times the things communities need isn't more shoes, it's something else. So now they're donating, instead of donating shoes, they're donating money. So they've still got that what's it called, a double bottom line, which is both about caring for the people on the planet, but also revenue simultaneously. But they're not doing that 1-for-1 model. And I don't know, that 1-for-1 model, it's great for marketing, but maybe that's going away too.
We'll see. But I think the money will probably go further and to people in those communities or, whatever, know better of what they need, so
100%.
Good for Tom's for pivoting though, because again,
right.
To your point, that was a powerful marketing message. So good for them for realizing that wasn't working. I think
100%. Right? Totally. So, Ebere, what do you know about retail?
Well, before I tell you what I know about retail, let me just say I've learned so much already on this call. I learned about greenwashing and the double bottom line, 2 terms I'd never heard before. So I'm sure our listeners and our watchers are also learning a lot as well. But here is the third thing that we know about retail. So we're talking about luxury fashion, right? Obviously, we all shop and wear clothes. I was gonna say we're all wearing clothes right now, obviously, but
am I? You can't see below here, so you have no idea.
Presumptuous of me, I apologize. But the fashion industry obviously aims to be both profitable and sustainable, and unfortunately, it's a very wasteful industry. I read that they produce over 92 million tons of waste each year across the world, and over 17 million tons of waste in the U.S. alone. Right. We've attempted to address these issues in a couple of ways. I think the most notable has been the growth of the resale industry with, a bunch of different resale retailers and luxury consignment retailers. Today, my coat is over on my chair by my desk, but I'm wearing a jacket that I bought from the Real, and I love it so much. I've been wearing it, wearing it out truly. So giving a real good second life in my closet. But, for luxury retailers, there's one big hurdle that is still remaining, and that is animal fur, right? So this is a picture from Dolce & Gabbana's most recent runway collection, and you can see this is a beautiful but probably very unethically produced fur coat that I personally would wear. I don't know about you, James and Taylor, if this is in your style, but I would definitely rock something like this.
So A and B. 100% love the look. I'm wearing it out tomorrow. B though, Ebere, tell me, I don't understand why is fur, I understand why people would ethically be against fur, but why isn't it sustainable?
That's a great question, James. So obviously fur comes from animals, right? Animals must die in order for fur products to be produced. And therefore, the cycle of decay is built into the fur process, right? Fur from a dead animal is going to rot, as all, parts of an animal will rot when it dies, unless there is some sort of chemical intervention, right? And so the process of producing fur clothes involves these manufacturers using these different chemicals such as formaldehyde or chromium to fight off this decay. And so they apply these chemicals en masse to these products in order to keep them from rotting, right? As a result of this very clearly hazardous process, it's not good for the people who are working on the fur, and it's also not good for the environment, right? And it's led the World Bank to rank the fur industry as one of the 5 worst industries for toxic metal pollution, right? So I think a lot of that has to come from the fact that most of the fur that goes in the fashion industry comes from factory farms, right? Which are inhumane in a lot of ways, obviously, but also there's obviously a big concentration. It's almost like a factory that's pumping out all of these different toxins and chemicals and stuff like that into the atmosphere, which is the sustainability part of it. Like you said, there's the humane aspect, and then this is the why it's unsustainable or not sustainable. So that's kind of why all the issues come up with fur, and because of that, luxury retailers have started to divest from fur in favor of and the fur process overall in favor of some more sustainable alternatives. So it's sort of been a wave that has been going, kind of piece by piece, and is gaining a lot of momentum. And I think right now we're at a tipping point, truly. So it started kind of back in 2017. Gucci pledged to stop using animal fur back then, and that was what, 5 years ago almost. And then it took a little while, but eventually their parent company, Kering, also agreed that they would not use fur in the future as well. And Kering is the parent company for not just Gucci, but other brands like Balenciaga, Bottega Veneta, Saint Laurent, and Alexander McQueen, right? So these are major, the highest of the highest luxury brands who have announced that they're going to, go fur free in the near future as well. After that, we saw announcements from Canada Goose, which is obviously a Canadian outerwear company. And I know we've all seen not just the patch on the shoulder, but the big fur hoods that I think are
Right.
characteristic of those jackets. Yeah. And they've announced that they're going to be phasing out fur by the end of 2022 this year. Further, in January of this year, Dolce & Gabbana, who made this lovely coat that we're looking at right here, as well as Montclair, which is another, again, outerwear company, which I think is where we see a lot of the fur sort of come into the fashion industry. They've also announced that they would not be using fur in any collections after this year. So the most notable announcement came recently from Neiman Marcus, and they pledged that they're going to phase out animal fur and stop selling it entirely by March 2023. So next March, right? To be clear, though, the policy that they've made for themselves does not include leather or all animal products, right? It's only focused on fur. But again, it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Ebere, is leather, the process to make leather, is that as detrimental as the process to make fur is for the environment?
I'm not totally positive, but I imagine that it is, right? I think when you think of something like another animal product, like maybe wool, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to speak for the sheep, right? But I think it's possible for them to give that product without having to die, right?
Well,
they
sure.
grow the wool on their bodies, and so they're just, shaved off and they keep growing. It's like, if I were to donate my hair or something like that.
Right.
So that is a little bit less, tricky. I think for leather, though, it does involve.
Just real quick, I would love to get a donation of your hair, Ebere. I could use it. And it'll be like an O. Henry story. But I'm not vegan. I eat meat. So ethically, I think I'm still, it's a little fuzzy. I feel a little guilty, but I'm okay with leather. But I'd be curious to see how bad it is, for the environment.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see that as well. And I'm sure, the impacts of leather are comparable, maybe a little bit less severe as fur. But again, I think like I mentioned, we're at a sort of a tipping point, right? Neiman Marcus is one of the largest, if not the largest, luxury department stores in the country. And for them to be sending this signal out to all of the brands and companies that they partner with, that they're not going to be using animal fur, I can only imagine that it's a matter of time before they expand that to all, harmful animal products. So definitely, a really important announcement on their part, and we're really interested to see what comes of that. They've even stated that they've chosen to phase out the use of fur as opposed to just stopping cold turkey, because it allows for the brands and customers that they work with to evolve with them as they sort of explore these different alternatives. So obviously that brings up the question of, if we're not going to eat, if not fur, then what, right? What are we going to, wear instead? And so there's been a couple of sustainable alternatives that have come up. One option includes, and we were just talking about leather. This isn't fur, obviously, but we're talking about leather, is apple leather, right? So apple leather is something that has been used by a company called Proto Fiore, which is a luxury women's shoe company, sold and offered in most Neiman Marcus locations. And, you can see here, these are some of the designs that they have. This is straight from the Neiman Marcus website. I don't wear heels, but if I did, I think these look pretty cute. I don't know, Taylor, you want to opine?
I have a question. Apple leather makes me think of like
the strips.
The strips that you buy, like they're right, like healthy fruit roll-ups.
100%. You can get them at Trader Joe's, right? They're so, no offense, they're gross.
They're gross.
This isn't made from that. This is literally from apples?
I believe so. It's from Apple, from the waste from, Apple products. They use
awesome.
it to make these shoes. And yeah, I agree. Even when you bring up those strips, I haven't had one maybe since elementary school.
Oh no, me too.
Right, but I remember them being pretty difficult to chew.
Yes,
am I
very thick, very thick.
So they're very thick, right? So maybe it wouldn't be a bad alternative for a piece of footwear. I feel like my concern was, will it last if I'm walking on apples? Is it going to decay or get ruined easily? And now you bring up those apple strips, and I'm like, maybe not. Maybe whatever they put into the apple leather seems to be pretty preserving it pretty well. So I think that those will be okay. But another option that we've seen, or another alternative alternative that we've seen comes from Stella McCartney with their Koba plant-based fur. So this is one of their fur coats using that plant-based fur. This is entirely not made from Apple products, and they say that it produces 63% less toxic emissions than the typical fur coat would take to produce. So they're very excited about this. Actually, Stella McCartney has been fur-free since they started the brand back in 2001. So they're definitely a pioneer when it comes to that. And here's just another example of that Koba fur on who else but the most iconic woman in fashion, Anna Wintour, editor-in-chief of Vogue. So if she's into it, I have to tell you, I'm into it as well.
I mean, it's Anna Wintour. I love that jacket.
It's gorgeous. This one's beautiful.
Beautiful.
The designs, what they're able to do with it, it really, it's. I think that's the important thing, is offering an alternative that, from what I read, produces the same beautiful emotional response, which I can definitely agree to having somewhat of an emotional response when I see a piece of clothing that I like a lot. And so being able to produce, alternatives that are just as good aesthetically and otherwise is, the crux of this movement and why I see it having legs and continuing further. So, I agree from what I've read that the future of luxury is fur-free. Like I said, Neiman Marcus Group has made the pledge, and it's only a matter of time until we see other notable brands and department stores follow suit.
I love it. I think that's great. Yeah, as long as you can make it special and like something unique, that it doesn't necessarily have to be made with animal fur to be cool. So that's great.
Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. So y'all ready for a little bit of the retail challenge?
Let me click out of here. Yep.
Always.
Sure am.
All right. Well, now it's time for the retail challenge. We're going to do 3 questions. You're going to get 1 point correct per question. Most points after 3 questions wins. If you are watching along at home live, you can play. Type in your answers in the comment section. If you are the first person to get the correct answer in the chat, you will win not only a point for your team, I guess, but also the eternal admiration of your peers. This week, I'm the quiz master. Taylor and Ebere are going to be playing live. And who won last time? Who's defending their title?
It's Taylor. I've been slipping. I'm not going to lie.
Okay.
Oh, that's right. That's unique for me. I'm excited.
All right. So let's get into it. So today we talked about examples of how retail is addressing sustainability, but some say the industry is not going to be able to solve this problem on its own. And we've sort of talked about that. It's going to take some outside forces. Very recently, Kenneth Pucker, who is the former COO of Timberland, wrote an article for Harvard Business Review. This came out in January. And the title of the article says it all: The Myth of Sustainable Fashion. So I'm going to give you 3 questions based on statistics that Pucker cited in this article. So here's question number 1. Pucker argues that an industry driven by Wall Street, which only rewards earnings, won't be able to be sustainable on its own. He cites the WEF to show that many, for example, shirts and shoes end up either being burned or in landfills. So your first question is, what percentage of apparel, shirts and shoes, end up being burned or going into landfills? Is it 1/4, 2/4, or 3/4? Ebere, you can go first.
I'm going to say end up in landfills or being burned. I'm going to say 2/4.
Okay. Taylor, what do you think?
Oh, I'm going to say 3/4, but I'm sad about it.
All right. I just realized our answers cover up most of your face. I did that accidentally. So you're just going to have to rise above when that happens. Unfortunately, the answer is 3/4. Apparently, the industry has doubled its production in the last 15 years. At the same time, the amount of time that people wear clothing before throwing it away has fallen by 40%. So because of that, a lot of stuff ends up in the landfill. So after 1 question, Ebere, you got 0 points. Taylor, you've got 1 point.
I'd be happy, but I'm not.
Well, the hits are going to just keep on coming. So here's question number 2. Many look at recycling as a solution. We've talked about that. Recycling clothing. But actually, it's really difficult for a lot of reasons I'm not going to get into here. You can check out the article if you want more details on why it's so difficult to recycle clothing. How much clothing is recycled into new garments? So this is taking clothing and, taking jeans and recycling them and creating a new pair of jeans out of them, but with all clothing. Is it less than 1%? Is it 4%? Or is it 6%? Who went first last time? Was that Ebere?
Yeah.
Okay, so Taylor, what do you think?
Under 1.
Under 1. Ebere, what do you think?
I'll go. Well, hold on. 6. Why not? 6%.
Oh, that's so nice.
Ebere, the answer is actually under 1%.
Did Taylor get these answers before? Or what?
I just know it's going to be really depressing.
She's
so
like,
you go
she's
with
the
what
biggest
you.
bummer.
Yeah. And just being Debbie Downer.
Wow.
All right, so Taylor's got 2 points. Ebere, you've still got a chance to earn back a little bit of the respect of our viewers with this final question about resale, which you were just talking about. So resale is also seen as a solution to the problem, but thrift and resale stores actually reject most goods that are given to them for resale because of things like poor quality. So a lot of stuff still goes into the landfill. But one of the things is they say recycling helps avoid some carbon emissions. So over the past 10 years, what's the average percentage of carbon emissions that have been prevented due to resale? Is it 5%, 2%, or 1%? And Ebere, you can go first. How many emissions have resale? What percentage of emissions has resale allowed us to avoid?
I'm going to say 1% using Taylor's strategy.
All right, Taylor, what do you think?
2%.
Taylor says 2. Ebere says 1. The answer is 1%, and I actually rounded up because the real answer is less than 1/100th of 1%.
I figured.
So yeah. Guys, it's not all bad. It's a bad story.
Are you sure?
But Pucker, our author, the former COO of Timberland, does say that there are ways to solve this issue. It's just not up to retailers and brands alone, which I think is kind of a common thought that we've been having here. He says it's really going to be up to governments to fix this, not the free market. Because as we all know, free market cares about profits. We care about sustainability, but at the end of the day, what affects our stock price more than anything else? It's the profits. So examples Tucker gives of ways that governments can solve this. 1, tax on virgin plastic. So fast fashion is built on polyester. If you were to tax that, there's a change there. Taxes on carbon emissions is another big one. Or an interesting one I hadn't thought of, but is laws requiring supply chain mapping. So in other words, you've got to know what's going into what you're selling, and is it being, is it coming from a place that treats its workers well, that's using sustainable inputs, all that kind of stuff. So those are some of the proposed solutions. And, we are seeing states like California and New York, for example, in the US, are putting some of these in place or talking about doing it. So there is some optimism there. So after 3 questions, Ebere had 1 point. Taylor had 2 points. Taylor, you are the winner. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's really shrouded in depression, but it's fine. I'm still happy.
Hey, you guys, I ended with all the practical stuff that can be done, that is being done. So it's not all doom and gloom here.
And honestly, I do feel, I don't know if I'm just being naive, but it does feel like everything that we're talking about is new, right? All of these are new trends. I hope we are not too late. But there is certainly the fact that we are talking about these things. You're seeing it from, powerful people in different companies talk about these things that we haven't heard before. So it is depressing, but know that there's still hope.
Yeah, if you feel so overwhelmed that you feel like things are hopeless, nothing is ever going to change. Like it really, yeah, and it's pretty easy to feel that way lately.
Very
on
true.
a lot of different fronts.
Yeah.
But anywho, so congratulations, Taylor, for winning the retail challenge.
Thank you.
Congratulations to anybody who's playing it at home. I want to recommend that all of you check out the latest episode of the Where We Buy podcast. Great episode. It was our 200th episode. We talked about what we do as retail researchers. I think it was a lot of fun. It's at wherewebuy.show, or you can download it or follow us on whatever your favorite podcast app is. Just search for Where We Buy.
Absolutely. And also be sure to hit the subscribe button on YouTube and click on the little bell icon so that you're notified when new shows come out each week.
You can also follow the JLL retail page on LinkedIn. We will be back next week. New episode is next Thursday, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. You can find that on everythingweknow.show or on the JLL retail LinkedIn page.
Absolutely. I also would like to put a quick plug for our new grocery report, which was just released today. If anyone's interested in reading it, which you absolutely should, you can go and find that at the research section of JLL.com. But, aside from that, Taylor, please tell me, approximately how many electric vehicles are there in the state of New Mexico?
Oh, thank you for that very specific question. I'll tell you all of that and all the other states next week.